Okay, you can take it away, Jack.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for showing up. I'm going to talk about the ASIAir in general, and let me get my screen all set here and hit the little present button. You should see a slide on the ASIAir Plus 101. And but anyway, greetings. So I guess before I get too far in, I wanted to start with kind of a icebreaker. Today's t-shirt, in case you're wondering, it is Snoopy in space. I don't know if you can make that out. Some people have commented on how many astronomy t-shirts I've had, so there's your thought for today. But anyway, so tonight's talk, I'm going to be doing a quick run through the features of the new ASIAir Plus. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. ASIAir, I don't know, whatever. It's ASIAir. I'll talk a little bit about other models, and if there is, a lot of interest on it, I might do a more detailed session. But this is the 101. So first of all, one might ask, is ASIAir only for astrophotography? And I would say no. You're not going to get the bang for your buck if you use it for visual, I'm going to say. But even so, you could use it for just in general guiding, better polar alignment. Also, to me, the big thing was you could get to a target much faster with the built-in plate solving. Even if you don't have a mount that's compatible, it tells you the right ascension declination, things like that. So to me, it's a real nice feature for that. Now, the reality is it's really geared for astrophotography. So the big pros to me were the super fast plate solving, the easy interface. You can save time in your session. The lower power usage, I'm drawing about 100 mils, 0.11 amps at 12 volts. So that's not a ton of juice. And simpler cable management. You're going to have if you have a astro camera on your telescope, the connection usually would be hanging off of that, going to your laptop in your lap. Now it's just going to this little teeny tiny box that sits on top of the telescope. And then just the overall simplicity. I really like the simplicity of the way it goes. So the models available. Well, let me just talk about the models. Period. I believe the ASIAir original, the one on the left there, is no longer available. Likewise, I believe the ASIAir Pro is being phased out. I suspect you can still buy it from some places. So that leaves you with the ASIAir Plus and the ASIAir Mini. I'm going to be talking about the ASIAir Plus, but that was my choice. The ASIAir Mini is actually cheaper and smaller, but it doesn't have quite as many bells and whistles. So, for example, my ASIAir Plus has 2 USB 3 connections. The ASIAir Mini only has 2 USB 2 connections. The ASIAir Plus has 2 USB 2s and 2 USB 3s. So my mindset was I gain a little bit of speed when I'm doing planetary and video imaging. And I don't know if that's entirely true. We'll see when I play with it a little bit more. The ASIAir Plus is available in 2 flavors, the 32 gig and the 256 gig. Last I looked, the 32 gig is $300 and the 256 gig is $400. That was High Point Scientific, which is where I bought mine. I chose the cheaper of the 2 flavors because I can just add jump drives, at my own leisure. So choices. When you're choosing whether or not to get this guy, like I said, you've got 4 ports. I'm sorry, I talked a little bit about the USB, but it has 4 ports on it for power. So you can power up your dew heater and your focuser and your, this and that and the other filter wheel. So it has some ability to turn those things on and off, and you can turn them on and off inside the app. The ASEM Mini has 2 power ports, so that's just choices. How many things are you going to have hanging off of this? Like I said, I talked a little bit about the USB ports. It also, the ASIAir Plus has an Ethernet port and a USB-C port that allows you connection to a laptop. There's a memory card slot marked as TF, and I believe that handles a micro SD card. I have not played with that. I should have done that before done my homework on that. The ASIAir Plus also has a plug-in port for DSLR shutter control. So all said, and ASIAir Mini comes with 99 gigs of storage. So I don't know how much is taken right out off the top. So I don't know how much I'm sorry, I said 99 gig. I didn't do I was going to fill that number in later after Google. I never did. So I need to check what the Mini, how much memory the Mini comes with. But the ASIAir Plus is slightly heavier than the ASIAir Mini, but the ASIAir Plus is about the weight of my iPhone. So it's not, to me, to say that the Mini is lighter is really kind of a false indication of value there. But when you got something hanging on the top of your mount, weight is a big deal. Compatibility. This is pretty important. As far as the camera, of course, ASIAir is going to work with ASI cameras. Big surprise, they want you to buy more of their cool little red cameras. I didn't check the list of all of the ASIAir cameras to see how many percentage-wise work with the ASIAir, but I'm going to say vast majority. I also was able to have it work with my Nikon D830, so it has some capabilities with other cameras. Now, the guide camera, I tried my QHY, and it does not work with it. And I think I've seen the same with other folks. I also have an old Orion Starshoot auto guider that's on permanent loan from Bill Newbert, and that did not work with it. So that might be a big consideration before you purchase this guy is, what equipment you have and does it work with it. The mount, my mount works with it. I've got an old Orion Skyview Pro, and I bought a cable for that, a USB 2 EQ5 from a place called Shoestring Astronomy. And they shipped that out in a very short order, and I was able to get it to work with the ASIAir. So I'm going to say their flexibility on the mounts is a little bit broader than it is with the cameras. And I'm going to take a wild guess. A lot of that is marketing. I could see possibly they'll increase the number of cameras, but I'd be very surprised if like the QHY line would be compatible with it anytime soon. So in the box, you get several accessory power cables. There's 2 of them that are 0.5 meter, 2 of them that are a meter, and 1 extension. These are all 2.1 millimeter jacks with the centers positive, the outside negative. Comes with a USB 3.0 cable and some instructions. What's not in the box is a power connector with a cigarette adapter or alligator clips or a polarized connector. So that was kind of surprising to me. Luckily, I had some of that stuff just laying around. But I won't kid you, I was very, very tense the first time I hooked it up, saying, boy, I sure hope the positive's on the center. And it is. But it was, and it says that on cloudy nights if you poke around enough. But still, you know, when you got an expensive box, you want to get the right polarity of power going to it. So I don't know if there's any reason to get any of the ASIAir devices if you don't get the app for it. It is available for Android and iPhone. I've heard there's a way to do emulation on a PC, and I think something is also available for the Mac. I've only tried the app on the, and I'm going to be doing a review from that perspective. So, you know, just wanted to bring that to the front. But make sure you have a decent amount of room on your device. I had an old iPad laying around, and I cleaned up a bunch of stuff, and I was able to successfully install ASIAir, and then it just locked up as soon as I brought it in, turned it on, or brought the app up, because it had no room left on the device. So I don't think, you know, average device that you bought recently won't be an issue. This was a pretty darn old iPad, but just wanted to kind of bring that to mind. But speaking of iPads, I would definitely recommend that, or I've heard recommended, and I think I agree, don't use your telephone for ASIAir app if you can avoid it. And I think the mindset is you may need your phone for other things like dialing 911 while you image, but also the impact on your phone battery. I don't know about you, but I like imaging in the dead of winter, and of course batteries don't last quite as long in the dead of winter, and you know, I could see you could really drain that down pretty quickly, and then at the end of your session you go, okay, now let me use my GPS to get home from this new location, and you can't get there. So the new app does support the newer iPads. That was not the case a month ago. So they are getting it updated as we speak. And by the way, we'll have a session for questions at the end, but if you want to jump in. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Steve.
No, I was just going to say, I have gotten it to work on an Asus Chromebook, and it will run under BlueStacks emulator under Windows.
Okay, there you go.
From
Yeah,
personal experience.
Okay, very good to hear. I thought I heard something about somebody doing some emulator tricks, so good to know. To me, one of the big benefits is not having to have a laptop, but you know, like I say, I could definitely understand people saying, let's stay away from the telephone. So, but anyway, that's that. So before you power up your device, hook up all your little gadgets that you're hanging off of there, your camera, your mount, your guide scope, your focuser, filter wheel, here. The one thing that's worth noting is you want to have a good solid 12-volt supply. That's one of the things that's brought up a lot in the discussion groups. You know, I had problems with this. What's your power showing on this thing? Well, it's about 11.8. Yeah, that's your problem. So, you know, you want to have a good solid. I get kind of antsy when my power gets below 12.3. So I'm going to probably hook up a little buck converter to bump up my voltage, you know, so that I can have a solid 12 volts, because there's not a lot of current, like I say. But anyway, hook up all the little gadgets hung off of it before you get started, before you power up the device. Another thing before you actually, and you can, once you power up the ASIAir Plus, the first thing you want to do is have your iPad hook into the Wi-Fi that is being broadcast from the ASIAir. Now, the first time you connect to it, you'll have to enter in a password, which is, if anybody can guess the most easiest password in the history of mankind, it's one of the two easiest passwords ever known, and it's not password. So, but anyway, and it's actually printed on the bottom of the device, so you can figure that out. But once you've entered it once, you don't have to enter it again, obviously. So on that particular device, I suspect you can change the password. I don't know how you do that. That might be important if you're at a stargazing event. Well, Steve's shaking his head. You're muted. You're muted, Steve. Steve, I see you're talking, but you're muted.
Okay,
There you go.
I was going to say, you don't have to worry about the password. Leave that all the same. But what's really important to know is know your ASIAir number, your network. So down at the bottom where he's got the the 3B131, blah, blah, blah. If 4 people at Bromelsick all have an ASIAir, you don't know which one is yours, and you don't know which one to connect to.
Yeah, so maybe I'll stick a sticker on the top that says, 31A41 on it. Okay, good point. Thank you, Steve. But anyway, you want to do this first. It's not the end of the world if you don't, but it's going to say, I don't know what's going on here. I can't find it. So if you get this out of the way first, it connects right up. So the first screen you'll see is this cool little dude standing by the seashore. Then that just flashes up for a second. Then there's a button in the bottom right that says enter device. And then from there, there's another screen that pops up for like half a second, but I didn't get it. Anyway, from there, it goes on to this screen. And it's easy as 1, 2, 3. Well, they sell it a little bit, but I think their point you'll get in the next few screens. But anyway, you can see it's got on the left side, you've got your histogram guide, solving, star detection, annotation, and then across the top, you've got a bunch of other things that I'll go into. But and then you got your mount controls off to the couch to the right too, and some other things. But anyway, I'll show you as we go through the 1, 2, 3. So the first time you go through it, it kind of steps you through and says, hey, if you tap here, you can set the exposure. And you have to hit got it, that you understand that tap here means exposure. And then tap here to take an image, and tap here to, mess with your histogram. And, tap here to get the sky. So, so you can hop through a bunch of different parts. It kind of gives you a little bit of an intro to it, which is kind of nice, because the average person doesn't read the instructions. So I can certainly vouch for that. I do have an extensive reference guide link from one of the vendors that might come in handy. I'll show you that later. They'll be at the end of the slideshow. Tap here to switch mode. So the choices on this screen are, I put this as a slide, but I didn't. I just, choices on this button where it says preview. The choices are focus, polar alignment, preview, live, auto run, planned, and video. So I start with a couple of shots in the preview screen. That way I can do long exposures and see donuts. Then I move to the focus screen if needed. I didn't really go into the details. The focus screen is really the same as the preview screen, except for it just keeps taking pictures over and over and over again. Rather than have to, just saves you a couple taps. But the polar alignment, it tells you, hey, point your scope vaguely in the direction of north, and get it all set up, and then hit the next button. And when you hit the next button, it says, okay, now if you have your mount connected, and you don't have to, you can have your mount without a cable, which is the way I used it the first time. It'll tell you to go ahead and rotate your axis, your RA, so many degrees. Actually, this is showing it as it's slewing. It says 18 degrees. I want to say it went 60. But anyway, if your mount is connected already, it just slews right on top without you having to do anything. If not, then you have to manually slew it. But once it does that, I didn't put this slide, but once you start to do your alignment, it has a little smiley face off in the top right corner, and as you step through the different, it says, oh, your altitude is too low, so which is bad for pilots too. If you swing that up a little bit, it says, oh, you're at this many degrees, this many minutes, this many seconds, and pretty soon the little face in the top right that's just kind of looking at you deadpan starts to smile as you get closer and closer to the correct RA or correct alignment. But you don't have to look through your telescope or anything like that. You don't have to, if you have you're thinking about getting one of those scopes that go through the middle of your telescope, you don't have to have that. It'll do the alignment for you. Anyway, once you get it aligned, you say, okay, what do I want to do tonight? If you click on that little constellation in the bottom left, it'll send you to their version of Stellarium. I'm not going to show you what it looks like. It's just, you've seen star charts before. But from there, you can hit the little magnifying glass in the top right. It'll also show you what Grant talked about. Well, what are we going to take a picture of tonight? It'll show you some of the things that are going on tonight that would be useful. I didn't just scroll down a little bit. But one of the things, it's kind of nice. It shows you, okay, at this time, this is the most elevation that this particular object has, and this is the direction it is on the compass. So you go, oh yeah, there's trees over there. I don't want to take a picture of Venus, or whatever. So it's kind of nice from that aspect. You want to see what's best on there tonight? I go, nah, I'm going to make my own darn mind up. So I'm going to hit this little magnifying glass in the top right, and I'm going to say, I want to look up NGC 7000. So you say NGC 7000, it shows you, something similar to this. It tells you, yeah, here it is. If you click on it, it says, okay, I'll take you to this screen. Do you want to go to? And it says, go or something like that. And then boom, it starts slewing. Now, one thing about it is it will slew to the position, and then it'll validate whether it's centered or not. Well, that's great when things are going well. If you were to go out on a cloudy night, like you went out like last night, if you were getting ready for a presentation, for example, and it was very, very poor plate solving, because you're staring right at the cloud, it will say, oh, I didn't find it. I think I'm here. I'm going to slew to this other place. And in my case, it slewed to where the mount hits the side of my tripod. So be ready on the stop button on this one. Would be my advice. And I'm sure that if I was clever, I could probably set up limits in there. But anyway, so there's a word of warning for you. But on a regular night, I don't think this is an issue at all. And so the very first night, I didn't do NGC 7000. I actually did the what's it? My brain just went dead. Anyway, I got this picture on the very first time. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, I think you're right. I made it. So I was really, now this is in St. Peter, so I know you guys are probably not impressed by this, but and I did not do polar alignment, as you can probably tell. And a matter of fact, I don't think I even used my coma corrector. So I was really impressed with just with the very minimal amount of work, how quickly I was able to get a picture. One of the challenges for my telescope is a 1,000 millimeter focal length is I'll say, oh, I want to go look at M8. And I slew to where I think it is, and the little hand controller says it's going to the right place after I've done an alignment. And I'm off by just a few degrees, and I'm like, okay, do I go north? Do I go south? You know, I'm just not familiar enough with that region of the sky, and I'm not a very good star hopper. So, and I can, you know, squint through my finder scope, but it's not as bright, you know, if you're trying to look at something that's kind of dim. So the nice thing about this is with the plate solving, even if you don't have a mount that's compatible, it'll say, oh, you're at 7 hours, 22 minutes right ascension and 12 degrees, 30 minutes of declination, you know, and I can sit there and manually move my mount left and right until it gets a little bit closer to where I want to be. So I found that very, very satisfying, very useful in getting it. And also I was impressed with the automatic histogram work that it does for you, because, you know, just a regular exposure, I expected, you know, kind of just a couple of stars, no nebula at all. And I was really impressed with what it did automatically. Like I said, this is from St. Peter's, like Pollution City. Then, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, I mentioned plate solving. I did this plate solving on the first night probably 20 times, just playing around. And every time it was sub-second. So I was very, very impressed with it. And you can see it gives you hours, minutes, and seconds. And it also tells you, you know, your focal length, your field of view, you know, just all sorts of stuff. So now my case, my mount was, at the time I was doing this part, I did not have my mount online. But you can see it's really, really precise, really fast. And you know, this was the really cool thing to me, you know, because I've been using astrometry.net to take my pictures. You know, I take a screenshot of the back of my camera with my cell phone. I go to astrometry.net and say, oh yeah, I'm off by so many degrees. So now maybe that's just, you know, me being dumb, and I need to learn more about astronomy. But this to me saved me a ton of time. So I took a shot, and I'm sorry, this is the preview. You can actually hit the download button here in the bottom right, and it actually saves the image to your device. And so this is the actual picture that it was downloaded, which I was very happy with for just the first night of playing around with it. And you can, as soon as you download it, it says, would you like to share it? And if you set up a ASIAir account, I guess, you can share it through their system. I did not do that, but still, the picture's on your device, so you can, you know, you can send it to your buddy and say, look what I did, you know, or to your wife and say, you know, this is the 17th time I've taken a picture of astronomy. And she says, yeah, whatever. You can also, once you've got it, an image on there, you can hit the annotate button in the bottom left. In this case, be correctly identified. It's within the nebula M8, and I don't know if you can see that in kind of light green letters up at the top. But if there was more, you know, stuff on the image, I'm sure it would have shown me a lot of things going on. You know, like you had a couple of, you had, you know, Mars and Jupiter or something like that, and I expect it would do that. I've not messed with planetary, but I assume it picks that up. So, music. Sorry, music. Oh, wait, we can chat. I'm sorry. USB expanders work okay, or will it slow things down? I don't know about. That's a good question, Grant, about the USB expanders. I did not mess with that. What auto guiders work with the device? I suspect there's an auto guider list someplace available. I was kind of impressed that my old clunker was compatible with it. So, you know, I didn't have to download any drivers or anything like that. But anyway, so I'm gonna see if I can. Hopefully you can see this video. You see something that says play again on the top?
Again.
I don't know if you could hear it, but, well, first of all, you see the ASIAir logo in the bottom left. You can turn that off, and I forgot to. There's an option for that. But also, it plays with some kind of semi-spacey sounding music. I believe you can turn that off too. I don't know if you can select your own music. That's a good question too. But anyway, so if you want to show somebody, you know, a video of something that you've taken a, you know, some planetary object or whatever, or you just want to do, you know, planetary objects, that then you can knock yourself off on that. The one thing about that though is I did not see region of interest as a hook on that. So I need to play around and see if I can find that anywhere, because if you're doing video of, you know, Jupiter, for example, you've got this little tiny piece of your screen that you really is the only stuff you care about. All that black off to the side is useless to you. So you don't need, and you might not even want the moons in there. And so you don't need that for you to be able to do any stacking or anything like that. And you want to be able to, you know, download hours and hours of, or no, minutes and minutes of data, and you want to be able to be fast. It'd be nice if you had region of interest. I don't know that it does. Anyway, so that's the 20,000 feet. Here's the challenges I came into. Other camera support, like I say, the QHY, I thought it'd be kind of cool if that worked. So, you know, now having said that, you could get a guide scope in their realm for like, I think like 120 bucks. So if you already have a full-fledged astro scope, if you just want to have something for guide, I think you can do it for pretty cheap, relatively cheap, sorry, you know. Power, like I said, you definitely want to have a solid 12 volts. I would say even you probably don't want to go much below 12.3 before things started acting a little flaky. You know, if you feel gutsy, you could probably do okay. The Wi-Fi range. This has been a little bit of a challenge in that you think, okay, I've got all this remote capability. I can go inside on a cold winter night and do all the astronomy stuff I want to, and while my telescope does all this other stuff, and I'm, you know, nice and awesome. You probably can, as long as you are less than a few feet away from your device. It's not a ton of range. I will say this, I did walk around, and as long as you've got line of sight, outdoor line of sight to it, you can probably go 20 feet, maybe more. But if you're on the other side of a wall or on the other side of lead glass, I'm gonna say you're gonna lose a lot of range. So that's a challenge. Now they have this thing called station mode that I have not played with, but I believe you can set up like a repeater or something like that, where you know, you set up a Wi-Fi device that will take the signal from the ASIAir and pass it on through to your system. I have not messed with that, but I suspect that a lot of people talk about that on cloudy nights and things like that. If you go to the target and it does not plate solve, be ready to hit stop, like I mentioned earlier. Otherwise, that thing can start fluing to Lord knows where. And I have seen the air exposure failure. I'll go into that in the next slide. And then it would be kind of cool if they had a thermostat or a cycle on the dew heater. Like if you had a dew heater as one of your devices, it'd be nice to say, yeah, I want 50% cycle or 25% cycle. So I'm just heating this up a little bit. I don't want to have something on there constantly. Now you can control those things on, you know, as you go, but it's just, you know, it'd be a pain to have to mess with. Back to the exposure error. exposure failure. I did see this several times, and that's the bad news. The good news is most of the time you can just kill the app off on your phone, iPhone or iPad or whatever device you're using. Just kill the app off and bring the app back up, and everything takes off. So you didn't have to reboot your ASIAir. You didn't have to lose your polar, your polar alignment or any of that stuff. I have had cases where I had to disconnect my camera and reconnect my camera. And I want to say I might have even had to reboot the ASIAir. And in that case, you do lose polar. So that would be bad. So that is my story. It only took me an hour to cover those 31 slides. Here's a reference if anybody wants to write down HTTPS www.science-astronomy, or you can go to tinyurl.com/3exnv279. This is a really extensive reference document, so I would definitely recommend if you wanted a screenshot of that or whatever. It's useful information. There's also a Facebook group, ASIAir Pro Plus Mini user group. I've seen gotten a lot of interesting information there. Cloudy nights, of course, and I got my cable for my mount at shoestringastronomy.com. That was really, I was super excited about that. I ordered that, I want to say a week and a half ago, as I realized that what I thought might work for hooking up my mount to the ASIAir didn't. And then I got this cable, and I was very happy and very excited about that. So, but anyway, that's the general thing. Next, and I'll do questions in a second, but next time I'd like to cover some more features if there's an interest. I didn't really go into the planning part of it or guiding in any detail. Also, I could probably play around with an SLR a little bit. I have definitely taken pictures with the SLR. It does work. So that's really cool. And then if there's any other interest too, maybe a live demo, might be able to do something like that. So any questions?
Yeah. So I think you tried to answer the questions I posted in the chat, but you were kind of breaking up. On the USB,
Okay.
you have 2 ports. Have you tried using a USB expander on those?
It actually has 4 USB ports. 2 of them are USB 2 and 2 of them are USB 3.
Okay. So your
The
camera hooks up to
Mini
USB.
has only 2 ports.
Pardon?
The ASIAir Mini only has 2 USB 2 ports.
Oh, that's what we were talking about, was the lower cost. Okay.
No, this is the ASIAir Plus.
Oh, okay. So have you ever used a USB expander on that, on yours?
I have not. So this gets too bad.
I used the USB hub on mine.
I'd assume that you'd use like USB 3 for the camera and then USB 2 for the
Right.
slower stuff that's kind of not as reliant on speed.
And a thumb drive too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's the other thing. Okay. Now, do you direct the output of your camera to the thumb drive that's on the ASIAir, or are you?
Yeah.
I give you my cool face. And the other question, Jack, was on. Oh yeah, the auto guiders. What?
Yeah.
What works on that? You got 2 things that seem to be pretty common that don't work.
Right.
ASIAir 120.
ASIAir 120.
ASI
auto guide?
120.
Is that what
MC
you
will
got?
work.
Is that what you got? I guess that's what you got, Miguel, right?
I would assume that it works with any kind of ZWO ASI camera, and then possibly anything else that it supports right now, like a DSLR or something like that, but no one uses those.
Okay. No one
Yeah,
uses-
for my guide camera, I have the 220mm Mini.
ZWO.
ZWO, yes, sir.
Yeah, I think if your camera's not red, it probably won't be able to be used for guide cam.
Can I paint it
And
red?
probably some of the red ones. Yeah, you paint it. But yeah, they definitely love supporting their own.
Okay.
So, but like I say, you can use. I was able to use my Nikon, so I think I'm going to take my for now until the finance committee gives the okay. I think I'm going to go ahead and use my ASIAir dedicated astro camera just for guiding, and then use my Nikon for imaging, and then you still get the benefit.
Yeah, so I guess some of the older cameras, like I've got the 135 and the 335, those would be, well, at one time was your primary imaging camera, then that gets kind of demoted down to an auto gator. But I can sympathize with ZWO with so many different standards out there. I mean, it's like,
Right. Well,
stick with your own first.
Historically,
Yep.
the reason why ZWO probably came up with the ASIAir in the first place was so they could sell cameras. Okay. And so they did that long enough ago that there were no ASI mounts. And so only did the mounts come later. And so everybody else's mount is probably almost like grandfathered into the whole thing.
yeah, and I think that's a good point too, Steve. You know how you can buy a printer really cheap, but the ink is super expensive.
Yeah.
I think that's a little bit of what their marketing ploy is here. They're keeping the computer relatively cheap, or the drug dealer, the first one's free, whatever way you want to look at it.
Yeah,
But
sure.
it's that kind of a scheme.
All last couple of days, I've been dicking around with trying to get my printer cleaned up so it'll print again. Yeah.
Echo Tank a month ago.
Yeah, I don't, I can't afford, I got like $75 in ink cartridges. I can't afford to get a quote cheap printer and throw away $75 in cartridges. And plus the fact that, I can't afford to really buy a computer, another printer as long as I can clean this one up. So, I'm retired. I got more time than money.
Yeah, Dave, did you want to
Another
mention, aren't there some fixes out there for the Wi-Fi signal issue?
Well, yeah, my experience was with the earlier model that Jack mentioned, the ASIAir Pro. When that was first sold, it stupidly had no external antenna. And so by luck, I was at Bromelseek, and a nice guy named Mike clued me in that I could send my ASIAir Pro off to a guy in Colorado Springs to put an antenna on it, which he did for cheap, and it works great now. And I have about the range that Jack described. I can put it in my front walkway, and as long as I don't move the tablet too far away, it stays connected and can go. But here's the other thing I discovered, and they'll tell you that too, is that if you've got your imaging going, if you programmed in an auto run to collect a bunch of pictures, it doesn't matter if you disconnect from your tablet. It's going to keep going until it finishes that auto run. That's a great feature because we'll get disconnected for all kinds of reasons. But that was a revelation and a good thing. I did have one comment though, a couple comments, Jack, about things that you think aren't there. I think they are. And I've been noodling around with this for a while, and eventually you find this stuff. Plus they've upgraded the software a couple times, and that confused me as well. But the dew heater is controllable for percent output. You go to there's a Wi-Fi signal button on there. I'm looking at it now, and you can set up the outputs 1, 2, 3, 4 to to control different things, different power outputs. But the dew heater might be most important. And I got mine at 100%, but you can dial it back if you want with a slider. If you wish.
Let me ask you a question, because I've always been paranoid about running the dew heater off the same power supply that I'm running the ASIAir, just because I'm always afraid it's going to drain it down too fast. Have you ever had any problems with that?
I have not, and that's what I do. I've got it the system
you're
running
doing it-
on this 12-volt power supply they
Put
give
it in
you.
Bromelseek, and are you using AC power? converted, or are you using a battery?
I've done it both ways. So most of the time I have Bromo Seek with AC power, but I took this rig to, out west one time with a 12-volt marine battery running the thing, and it worked without fail. It was fine. I was nervous about that as well. You're like, yeah, I think you told me, Steve, 12 volts is 12 volts. Just plug it in and let it go.
Well,
And,
12 volts is 12 volts until your battery
Until
drops
it
down
becomes
to 11.
11.9.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know. I haven't measured it. Jack has. I don't know. It's 12. It's whatever it is.
Yeah, but that is a good point. One thing I did want to mention, I thought I had it in my slideshow, but I didn't. On my ASER Plus, it has 4 power ports for output devices, so focuser, do here, what have you. Those 4 ports can each handle, I want to say,
I
3
think
amps.
2
each.
amps.
It's a lot.
Yeah,
That's a
maybe
lot.
it is 2 amps. But the ASIAir itself can only handle 5 amps. So you theoretically could exceed your maximum drain on that. So you would have to, turn this one on, turn this one off, that kind of thing. So I'm thinking, now the fact is the only thing that's going to be serious current is going to be the dew heater. So you're probably fine. But if you had, an old focuser and a dew heater and, what's the filter changer, they all were cranking at the same time, you might see a little dip in the juice. I want to say,
Well, I'd say the cooled camera, draws a fair amount of current. If it's
right.
the chiller, but it's not going to exceed, at least what I've seen with the well, get a 533 MC Pro camera. It doesn't exceed the power needs on that. It probably won't for any of the ASIAir cameras.
Damn, Dave, you mentioned a real dichotomy there. So you got dew heaters, which are going to draw a lot of power when they turn on. So that's to keep your telescope optics warm.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you got a cooler on your camera, which is going to draw a lot of power, designed to keep the camera cold. So
Yeah.
you got a lot of power keeping cold things warm and warm things cold.
Yeah. Well, that's the way you have to do it, I guess.
That's right. That's
but the power supply that I have that came with it, or apparently a deep cycle marine battery does the job, and I haven't had any failures. I had one other comment about features. There is a region of interest button on the video control. It's set up to different 480p and 1020 or 920p, and that does work. I've used that for getting some video as well. And one other feature I want you to be aware of, Jack, if you hadn't found it, is in the mount control, at least in my mount, which is an iOptron mount, there's a auto center feature that will repeat the plate solve several times until it centers your object. And that works really well. Sometimes for me, it repeats 2 or 3 times. Eventually it will fail. It will stop if trying, but I found that works really well.
Something else is kind of nice, and looking at that screen that Jack's got up there right now, if you wanted M8 closer to the center of the picture, if you just tap on the center of the screen where you want it to go, it'll bring up a little sub menu and you can say center here.
I'm pretty impressed that he could capture that from St. Peter's as slow as that is.
Yeah.
I'm envious.
Well, I mean, but that's, EAA kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's still really low. A lot of light pollution.
Dan, should we mention the what I emailed earlier in the day?
Yeah, I think the club actually has an ASIAir. I don't think it's the most recent one, but I think we do have one. I don't see it on the equipment list to check out, but I don't think it's been used in a long time. So I've asked. So we might actually have one of these that a member could check out and use. But neither Steve or I got a response on whether it's actually available or not yet. But I'll let you guys know if once we get it answered. My phone keeps going on. Just one clarification too, Jack. You mentioned that when you had to reboot it, you lost your polar alignment. Did you really? Does it really force you to go through polar alignment again, or? Because I was going to say polar alignment is physical and it shouldn't require you to do anything.
You're absolutely right. I had forgotten. Yes, the polar alignment was all physical, so I'm just cranking knobs on the mount itself. So yes, you could go through the polar alignment, or you could just tell it no, I don't want to. So
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to clarify on that you could just bypass it. Someone else asked me that.
I think well, yeah, no, you could, and there's a button that's when you do a plate solve that says sync mount. So I suspect that you could just tell it, hey, here's where I am, figure it out. Don't believe that button works when you're really close to north.
Yeah,
I heard somebody say something about that, but so you know,
that's a challenge for everything when you're close to north. I mean, it's hard to guide. It's hard to do lots of things.
Sorry, let me look at the chat. Yeah, the mount. That's a good point. That might be coming handy for, you know, if somebody has multiple scopes and go just click it onto the mountain and go off to the races. One thing I did want to mention real quick on polar alignment is I read on one of the, I want to say in Cloudy Nights, it does do a polar alignment in the Southern Hemisphere. And as I don't know about you guys, but I am really stressed out that one of these days I'd love to go down to Peru or something like that and do some astro down there. And I'm like, oh, the alignment must be bare. And if you had this to your advantage, you just pointed vaguely south, it would definitely take care of that.
Hey, Jack, from what I've heard regarding polar alignment, I tested it out on Saturday night. You can do the 3-star line, and you don't have to point. Okay, let me rephrase that. Point to Polaris, but not using Polaris as your plate solving. I pointed to Vega, well, not Vega, Arcturus.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
ASIAir does have a possibility to turn on all sky alignment.
Yeah.
It is not default.
Okay.
So maybe what you're doing is the all sky alignment.
Yeah.
You
You
know,
just made my day, Miguel, because the north sky for me is right by my neighbor's street light. So normally I do my astronomy kind of around the corner from that, so I'm not, you know, getting blasted by that street light. And but if I do my astronomy there, there's a big tree in the way of the Little Dipper, so that'll be really handy. Thank you.
Yeah, and I got within 24 arc seconds when it was all said and done.
Fantastic.
So I mean, give it a shot. Give it a shot.
so let me ask you this, Steve. So okay, so as far as the polar alignment goes, you can do a directed polar alignment from the ASIAir, right? I mean, it can tell you which way to move your your axes for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And then you'll get close, like Miguel got to within 24 arc seconds. Then you can do a 3-star alignment to get a finer, oh, well, I'm sorry, you use a 3-star alignment so that you get better tracking over a long exposure.
I don't know of that.
Okay, because here's what happens. So if the distance away from your polar alignment, the longer your stars will be trailed over, say, a given exposure. Conversely, if you want to run a 10-second exposure, then close is good enough. But if you want to run a 2-minute or a 4-minute exposure, then you better be pretty damn close, right, Dan?
They have a pretty good mount.
A pretty good amount, right? And then your tracking is meant to make up for whatever inaccuracies are in the mechanical movement of the axis, right, Dan? Right, guys? Okay. So you got a couple of things working against you. So if you're not dead on, well, you can be dead on the polar alignment, but you can have horrible gearing in your mount, and you'll still get bad stars. I'm gonna do the video so you can see my hand movements. So you get bad stars, or you can have an excellent gear train, an excellent mount, and an excellent polar alignment, and you'll have an excellent exposure, very, very fine stars over a 2-minute exposure, right? I mean, if you got a perfect mount and you got perfect alignment, then you could have a 2-hour exposure and still have pinpoint stars. Now we start, as our inaccuracies grow from that, then we wind up limiting our exposure time to the point where the night that Miguel and I were working on, you couldn't go 2 minutes without having star trails, even though we had kind of a close polar alignment and we didn't have tracking. And he still had very small star trails at 2 minutes. And where I'm going here is yeah, so you got PEC. Is that still a valid term, Dan?
Yeah.
Okay. So you got PEC is helping refine your tracking. You got an auto guider. I'm sorry, PEC is refining your, PEC is taking into account the error in the gear train, right, Dan? That's just giving you a fixed rate. If you're misaligned, then you can have the perfect rate and perfect PEC correction, but you're still gonna have star trails because you're not perfectly aligned. If you're perfectly aligned, PEC will help get you the better star image. And your auto guiding is going to help keep that centered for the longer exposure, right?
Yeah, there's just a lot of different things and a lot of different places where you can get errors or whatever.
Yeah, and there's some things that you can do and not have to worry about the others. So for me, doing a 3-star alignment gives me a very accurate positioning capability. So now the electronics knows where my scope's pointed. And because I've used both the deck and RA axis in order to do the 3-star alignment, the software now knows where this is located in space relative to the pole axis. And now it can slew wherever it wants to get a very accurate location of a thing. And then when I go into track mode, it sits there and it jiggles the deck and the right ascension axis to keep that point in space centered in my field of view.
Yeah, I think the pointing model tends to not have anything to do with the way it tracks.
Okay.
It's just there to find stuff. Higher end telescopes, they build pointing models, and my mount will speed up and slow down tracking based on a model, but 99% of the scopes out there are mounts. The pointing model is just that to get you close to where you want to be. It doesn't really have a whole lot to do with it.
Okay. So is the ASIAir talking to the mount, Steve, or is it the ASIAir kind of like independent of what your mount is thinking?
Well, I will say, if you want to do a 3-star alignment, you have to use your mount in your mount software to do that. The ASIAir won't control that whatsoever. And the only thing the ASIAir is going to do, it's going to plate solve and say, I'm pointed right here. Okay. And then you'll move your mount somewhere else, and then it'll do another plate solve. And I'm pointed right here. And I think it gives you the choice, and I think Jack mentioned this, of saying solve and sync. You know what I mean? After it says this, I sync them out. But yeah.
I'm sorry about the long preamble to that. You answered a question plus another one I didn't know I should have asked. Okay.
So one comment about that regarding the polar alignment feature. One thing I discovered when I switched from my planetary camera small field of view chip to a larger camera, bigger field of view chip, is that the ASIAir's polar alignment criteria for good enough polar alignment changed. So if you have a bigger chip, you don't have to be as precise before you get that smiley face. When I had the smaller,
And if you have a wider focal, excuse me, if you have a shorter focal length, that's also true.
yes, that would be the same situation. So it's pretty clever that way, in that they built in some features that are linked to knowing what camera you have, and specifically the field of view, which is really important for the go-to functions. But as far as the guiding and helping correct for those sorts of things, it uses PhD2 software that's embedded in the code.
But it's faster than PhD2 on a PC.
Well, it's a really good implementation, far as I can tell. I never could get it to work with my laptop, but it's working. It works really well. When it hasn't worked, it's because I've had the scope not balanced right or some other mount problem. It wasn't the software. It was my problem with the mount. So that but the go-to feature is pretty good, especially if you auto center. It finds stuff amazingly well.
So are you saying you're using that on a alt-azimuth mount?
No, it's equatorial.
Okay.
Some mounts will work in alt-az, though poorly.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because you got a rotating field there over longer exposures, and I was kind of wondering how Dave does that.
But with the live stacking, if you go and do the live stacking stuff, it'll rotate between.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, it'll work, yeah. But I guess the narrower the field, yeah, because the alt-az, it's going to rotate, and it may not allow long enough exposure for some things.
So I'd suggest that anyone, Jack, if you're new to this, anyone who's got this, would try the live stacking feature, because it works great, and you can subtract a dark a dark frame really easily. It'll do flats as well, but I just usually subtract the dark frame.
I did the live stacking briefly just out of the box, and I didn't have darks at the time, so it didn't improve anything of significance. But I was taking pretty short exposures, and just a handful of them. I was kind of expecting some magic pull a rabbit out of the hat like I had seen on the first screen. So that's a good point. One thing I forgot to mention too, I just added a slide, is that if you click on the little Wi-Fi guy, it tells you what your input voltage is, and the current, and the CPU temperature, and you can, like I said, you can select the new heater. It sounds like the way to mess around with that on the thermostat. But when you slide this to shut down, it says shutting down the ASEM device and the app. It does shut down the ASEM device. It does not shut down the app. The screen just goes away, but it's still running. So if you care, you can get rid of that. But I thought it was kind of cool that they have. I'm kind of a stats guy, so it tells you what all's going on there. And I just realized it also tells you the Wi-Fi 2.4 gigahertz. That's interesting. But there's that station mode. Anyway, there's this little things that I guess that's the thing I kind of like about it. It's pretty simple, but you can poke around and dig into, as you guys have found. The more experienced gang that have been chiming in here, there's a lot to it. Also, I like the stability of it. If it bounces, if you have the problem with this or problem with that, it's pretty rough and tumble. And they even say that on their site, that it's designed to recover from issues.
So you can knock your scope over, lift it up, and it'll keep on going.
Arv is covered with mud.
Oh, ouch.
Oh,
That was a dirty comment.
Oh,
Yeah, well, if the shoe fits.
yeah, we're slinging mud around now. Jeez, this thing must be over. Hey, so this program that you're using, that works with the ASIAir Mini, the Plus, and is it backwards?
Correct. I assume it works with the old ASER, but I don't know that.
I would say it would work with all of them, but features on the original ASIAir that ran on a Raspberry Pi 3, it's not going to be able to do certain kinds of things.
Whoa, okay.
Okay, if you get the Plus or the Pro, no problem whatsoever.
So when you run this thing, Jack, do you have to like tell it? Well, I guess it knows if it's plugged into the Mini or the ASIAir Plus, or do those model numbers really care for use with this?
I don't think it does.
It's kind of transparent to which model you're using.
Yeah, I was wondering if it. And this is the version of the software, so I don't think it really cares. Oh, it says ASIAir Plus in the bottom. But yeah, see, it even has a switch device, so I guess you could have multiple going. That would be kind of cool, huh? I got 5 telescopes and I'm controlling them all from one iPad.
Ooh. Really? Man.
And I did see somebody, if you saw on the one screen, I think it was on the plate solve. Yeah, it says your focal length is 1,002 millimeters. So my telescope is not 1,002, it's 1,000. So it figured this out from somehow.
Plate
But
solve.
also, yeah,
Jack?
plate solve, right.
Jack, this is probably closer to what you actually got. No scope, if it says 1,000 millimeters, no scope is exactly 1,000.00. You probably do have a 1,002 millimeter scope.
I thought it was kind of powerful. So yeah.
Pardon?
No, you're right. It's got to be from the plate solve, and
Yeah.
it says I've got a telescope that goes to 11. But
Put good money on that value right there.
yeah, oh yeah. But what I'm driving at is you can hop to a different telescope, and I want to say there's a selection thing that allows you to go to a different telescope, and maybe even as simple as the next time you plate solve, it says, oh, you're using this scope. So a lot of flexibility, even from that perspective.
Well, I would think that if you can switch scopes connected to this thing is actually seeing that and saying, okay, I'm going to put this one for the 8-inch over here, and then I'm going to connect up to the Red Cat and use those numbers. And then when you switch back to the S8, I'm going to use the numbers for the SC8. I would hope it would do that. I would think it would do. If you can switch scopes or if you can switch ASIAirs, I would hope it could do that.
Yeah, stay at that screen.
I didn't. Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't put the screen on there, but one of the screens it tells you, lets you select some information, and I suspect that it pre-fills with the scopes that you've used so far.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
and any adjustments that you made.
No.
Oh.
What it is, it's the screen before that. The first time you use it, it's the configuration screen. And in that configuration screen, you select and say, this is my mount, this is my guide camera, this is my main camera. And you'll specify if you got an autofocuser, and that's where you normally would enter the focal length if you know it. But if you don't know your focal length, that's where you put the one, and then once you enter it for that particular setup, yeah, it'll go ahead and we'll save it and it'll jump over it. Yeah, it doesn't jump over it. No, it goes to that every time, and you have to hit connect.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Yeah, there's a screen before that one, before this one is shown on the screen.
So then we may not be able to switch.
Well, no, but see,
setups
if you had multiple setups, you'd have multiple ASIairs, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Oh, okay.
yeah, you would then switch between airs, and each different air would have its own particular configuration for its
Gotcha.
particular scope
And
setup.
Yeah, I can confirm that.
So then the app is going to download the information it needs from the actual ASIair it's talking to.
Once it signs into it. Yeah.
Cool. I can't imagine.
I will tell anybody who's interested, one problem that I had, and that might not really be a problem, but to me it's a problem, is that I don't always use I never use the ASIair's Atlas. Okay. I'm one to use something like Sky Safari, and Jack says he's used Stellarium.
Yeah.
And one of the problems that I have is that if you use Sky Safari, you can find an object in Sky Safari. I'll back up. You can set the ASIair to take commands from Sky Safari. Okay. And then I can use Sky Safari to find an object and say, go to it. And my ASIair will tell my mount to go to it and do the plate solves and all that sort of stuff. but when I start taking pictures and I want to save it, it doesn't take the name with it. So if I say go to M8, okay, it may think that it's still pointed on whatever the ASIAir thought it was with its last internal search. And so it gives it the wrong name.
Oh, really? So if you use the internal search to go to M16, and then you're done with M16, and Sky Safari says now we're going to go to M8.
Sky Safari says go to M8. The ASIAir's internal save, at least on mine, says, "Oh, I still think I'm on M16." And I'll try to save it as M16.
Good thing to know, Miguel.
Yeah, I think with mine, you can, in the auto plan, I think, you can put all that in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that night, last Wednesday, I was like, okay, go to NDC 6666, and you just key that in, off you went.
Yeah.
And we went to M92, I could see that name on the screen still. So, but that's because you were using the internal or the ASIAir, right?
Correct.
Not Sky Safari.
Because that's the one I was going to say, Miguel. That's a good tool to have, is Sky Safari or Stellarium on the laptop.
You're talking about, Steve.
Okay.
Steve, this is the screen you were talking about with the configurations.
Is Jack there?
Yeah, he just shared his screen, so he's here.
Voice, Mike.
My audio?
Oh, there he is.
Yeah. Sorry, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. I was just asking Steve if this is the screen he was talking about where you select
That's it.
the top. Okay.
That's it.
See how there's a pull down on the mount. So I guess you could do multiple mounts. You could do multiple cameras, multiple guide cameras. It doesn't look like there's a choice on the telescope,
That's your main camera.
but I guess you would just type it in.
Which one is that?
And maybe like you say, I'm sorry, go ahead, Miguel.
So yeah, wait, your cursor was under the 1000. That's your main guide scope focal length.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
when it plate solves, you get that extra 2 millimeters.
It makes all the difference, man.
Because you're accurate, but I'm much more accurate.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I suspect if you just swapped out another telescope, you have to type that in here and then plate solve, and it knows, yeah, I guess, you get some things, you don't get some things. I don't know.
Oh, well, check. Oh, main guide scope. Wait a minute. Main guide scope. Main camera.
Enter 0.
Ah.
There you go. You can enter 0 and let it figure it out. There you go.
Yeah.
You gotta have the right focal length for the guide. Okay.
Main/guide scope focal length. So I'm kind of curious why it says main/guide scope focal length. I mean, is it the main scope or the guide
That's
scope?
the main. Yeah, that's the main scope.
So, but why does it say guide scope then if you've already got you got a guide?
No. Grant, you're looking at it the wrong way. You put both numbers in there. It wants to know the focal length of your main scope, where you got 1000, and where the 0 is.
I
That's
thought
where
that
the
was
focal
like the
length is.
remainder.
supposed to
You're
go for
right.
your guide.
There's the main, there's the guide.
Okay.
Yep. Thanks, Steve.
And I will tell you, that's the iOS screen for that. The one on Android, it's got the same information. Looks a little bit different.
Mhm.
A little easier to figure out for them.
Yeah.
Does it have a way to, does it have a setup for doing flats and darks and stuff like that?
Yeah, it automatically does it.
Yeah. Well, you have to.
Or you have to set up.
I haven't messed around with that.
Yeah, how many exposures do you want, and that sort of thing. And then obviously it'll tell you if you're doing darks, cover the thing up. In the darks, I think there's an auto on the dark. I'm not sure if there's an auto on the flats to be able to figure out
Yeah,
how many ADU you want to get.
I believe there is an auto on the flats.
Okay.
But from what I've learned, using the auto on the flats kind of comes with a risk because it could be underexposed. As far as, the brightness values. From what I read online, they set it to at least 0.05 seconds. I'll have to find it. But I've set it at auto and that flat was dark compared.
What I've done for flats is I've taken an exposure and then gone over to that main preview screen, and down at the bottom where the histogram is, I try to figure out where the peak is and look at the ADU. And I know that I want to try to get an ADU of about 32,000. And so I figure out whatever exposure it takes to get around 32,000, and I'll carry that over and I'll manually enter it for flats.
Yeah, I think there's a place where you can actually put the ADU you want now, and it'll auto determine it'll take exposures and auto determine the exposure lane. Oh, it's like everything else they make, it's constantly in flux and being upgraded. So what you're saying tonight, it might not be the same in the next version, but they typically add features and fix problems.
Oh, Windows, huh?
No. There's some software I use where every time you upgrade it, things go bad. So the ASIAir doesn't have a reputation for that.
Grant will now say something about curriculum simulation.
Or
I was just gonna say, you sound like you're talking about Starry Night Pro.
It's us guys with the Paramount mounts, the SkyX. Every time they come out with a new update, they break something that was really important, giving you some new feature that you're not going to use. And we have there's certain people like me that will run the old stuff until I need something in the new. Then there's other people that will upgrade their stuff before they drive out to Danville.
No.
And then find out in the field that oh, this doesn't work anymore. After I
Or then there are the guys. Then there are the guys that will update at Danville.
Yeah.
Sometimes your computer doesn't give you much of a choice.
Yeah, it's getting that way.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the ASIAirs?
Yeah, I just don't know what they are yet.
I'll let you guys
You're
know
talking
once
about
we figure out about the one the club has, because there might be.
Did you
one.
guys talk about the live stacking at all? I didn't hear it. If you did.
Touched on it.
We talked about it a little bit.
Because I've had pretty good success with it for
you've been
outreach
using it.
stuff.
So you've been using outreach. Yeah.
I don't know, can I share my screen? I can show you one because I got like an image through a lot of smoke even on the supernova from the live stack. It was pretty nice.
Are you doing outreach out at Bromlesick Park?
Mostly with Wash U students, but sometimes at Bromlesick, but not as much as I'd like to. Yeah.
Downtown.
And one thing should be said about live stacking is that if you go the live stacking route, you can also save all the images that you are using to do the live stack, and you can carry them over to whatever other program you would like to deal with.
Yep.
But live stacking is just really, really cool because you can see it on the screen and you're bored and there's nothing else to do. And let's get the best image you can.
This was one that I had of that supernova from the live stack, and there was a lot of Canadian smoke that night. So
Where did you shoot this?
this was at Tyson Research Center out on 44 by like
I was
Elk.
gonna say you shot this from downtown St. Louis. I'm impressed. Okay.
Nice.
Well, I mean, I'm telling you, with the amount of smoke in the air, like this was worse than down St. Louis, I think. So,
Yeah.
So Mike,
Yeah.
Mike, what was your exposure time on these?
I was doing 30-second exposures, and this is probably a stack of 20 or 30 of them, but it really stops making a difference after the first, 10 or 20. I just, because I'm doing outreach, I have the iPad open, just letting people see the image. But I really like the live stack for outreach, because people, they watch the screen and the image gets better and better every time it refreshes, and they kind of
Yeah.
get excited and give you a little oohs and ahs when they see it. So
They do, and I found that the 30 seconds is about the longest I'd want to do exposure. And I also find that after about 8 or 10, it doesn't get tons better. So you get some pretty quick reward, for your efforts with 30
Yeah.
seconds.
yeah.
Very cool. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, and so I'm able to, hop around and do a bunch of targets, and probably spend like 10 minutes on each one, letting people see them. And it's really fast, like you guys were saying, the plate solve and everything, and moving around is really quick. So I've been pretty happy with it.
Well, let me ask you this as a general question. So with all of this dust and haze in the air, do you find an advantage with using like an IR or a red filter so that you're not up there getting a lot of light pollution? And does that help give you better images using just black and white through a red filter or infrared with this stacking? Not trying to do color, you know what I mean?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I was using a luminance filter there, so I think it's a UV IR cut.
So then you're getting visual bandwidth. So you're getting all the light pollution, right? Did you have an LPR on there, Mike?
No.
So the question is, what would you get, in these skies if you did go that route where you put on a like a low pass, like a IR or an LPR?
I think you said he was using that, wasn't he?
I wasn't using any kind of light pollution reduction. Although I will say, when I took that image that I was showing, there was a lot of smoke, but it was almost at the zenith. So
Okay.
it was, probably least affected by light pollution out where I was, and just pointing straight up.
I'd never get any good images because I'm always there fiddling with hardware, Man, let me put a filter in here. Does this work? Does that work? Yeah, it worked great for that night, but from there on out, it's like, okay. Thanks.